For our 10-year anniversary, my wife and I gave each other hall passes. It seemed fun until everything fell apart. I'm Josh, 35, and I've been married to my wife, Emily, also 35, for the past 11 years. We first crossed paths during the final stretch of college and hit it off so well that we didn't look back. After dating for about a year, we had a whirlwind 4-week engagement before tying the knot. Our marriage has been incredible overall. Not flawless, because let's be honest, no relationship is, but solid and rewarding. Sure, we argue sometimes and get on each other's nerves, but we've grown better at navigating marriage over these 12 years. Along the way, we've built a life full of adventures and even managed to save up a good chunk of money. Right before our 10th wedding anniversary, we had a serious conversation about starting a family. We both agreed that we'd be happy with just one kid. We also talked about when to make it happen, and ultimately, we decided to give ourselves one more year without kids. During that time, we made it our mission to check off as many bucket list items as possible. We went skydiving, took a dream trip to Italy, and did some classic vacation stuff, like lounging on the beach and visiting amusement parks. Beyond that, we made an effort to reconnect with friends, both old and new, and even joked that this was our last year of freedom since we skipped bachelor and bachelorette parties when we got married. But looking back now, it was on our 10th anniversary, before we embarked on this so-called freedom year, that we made a choice that's come back to haunt us. For some context, Emily and I have always had a strong connection in the bedroom. We're both pretty high energy and share a lot of the same interests. We were also upfront about our active pasts before we got together, nothing wild, just around a dozen partners each and a few memorable special moments from college. Since becoming a couple, though, it's been all about us and only us. Our 10th anniversary celebration was jam-packed. We spent the day enjoying activities, capped it off with a fancy dinner, and booked a suite at a swanky hotel. During dinner, Emily got nostalgic and started asking me about our favorite memories over the years, which led to a deep, heartfelt conversation. Then she threw out a curveball. "What's something you miss about being single?" I hesitated and said, "Don't get mad, but one-night stands." To my surprise, she laughed, which instantly made me feel less awkward, and admitted, "Yeah, I kinda miss that too." That opened the door to a playful conversation about what we liked about those fleeting experiences. We even reminisced about our first night together since our relationship started as a casual post-party hookup. At some point, I blurted out, "Well, we've got this big year ahead of us. What if we added a one-night hall pass to the list?" Emily looked intrigued but cautious. "Maybe," she said. "You don't think that's pushing it? We've never done anything like that before." I shrugged and told her, "I don't think it's a big deal. Let's talk it over this week and see how we feel." She agreed, and the rest of the night was amazing. Over the next few days, we hashed out the idea and eventually decided to go for it, with rules in place. We'd each get one hall pass to use over the next year, but it had to be a one-night only thing with someone who wasn't part of our lives. We'd stay safe, give each other a heads up beforehand, and communicate clearly. The plan was locked in by the time Emily went off birth control on our 11th anniversary. That year was full of adventures, as planned. For my part, I got on the apps and eventually met a 30-year-old woman whose husband had just agreed to open their marriage. She was testing the waters and figured a no-strings-attached night with me would be a good start since that's all I was offering. It was a fun, exciting night, and I gave Emily a heads-up beforehand. She was actually thrilled for me and, when I came home, reclaimed me with gusto. I assumed she'd use her hall pass soon, but I was wrong. Months passed, and every time I asked if she'd found someone, she'd say, "No, no one's really caught my attention. Maybe it's me." She mentioned she was looking for a younger guy around 25, but said most came across as arrogant or immature. 11 months into the year, she finally said she was ready. By then, I'd started feeling guilty for using mine, thinking maybe she'd changed her mind and wasn't going to use hers at all. She reassured me it was still within our rules and told me the situation. For the past 3 months, she'd been working with a 23-year-old intern named Wes from another department. They collaborated on work projects but nothing personal. She admitted she was attracted to him, especially after realizing he wasn't some clueless kid, but new coworkers were a bad idea. Plus, he might get hired full-time, which would complicate things. Then, a few days prior, Wes announced he'd taken a job across town and would be leaving soon. Emily asked if he was out of our lives enough to qualify. I said it sounded fine, as long as she stayed smart and safe. A week later, after Wes's final day, Emily walked into his car and proposed the idea. He was hesitant at first, worried about getting tangled in a marriage, but she put me on FaceTime to confirm it was legit. Once I reassured him, he agreed. They went to a hotel, and she came home the next morning, where I reclaimed her. A few weeks zipped by, and on our 11th anniversary, she stopped her birth control. Fast forward a couple of weeks, and Emily got pregnant, which felt surprisingly quick. At her first appointment, we discovered she was about 7 weeks along. The timeline perfectly matched her hall pass night, although we'd been intimate plenty around that time, including the very next day. Now, I'm stuck in my head, stressed to the max. There's a chance the baby isn't mine, and I don't know what to do. Emily said she needed a walk to clear her thoughts, so I'm just sitting here, stewing over this mess, trying to figure out my next move. The baby's here. Let me catch you up on everything that's happened between Emily and me since my last update. After Emily went out for her walk that night, I waited anxiously for her to come back. When she did, we had a long, intense conversation. I asked her straight up if she'd used protection with Wes. Her answer? No, that didn't even cross my mind. I was stunned, completely floored by her response, and I couldn't help but snap a little. What the hell happened to being safe and smart? I asked, my frustration spilling over. She looked genuinely confused. Is that what you meant by that? I thought you just meant making sure the guy wasn't a psycho. I was on the pill. I don't get why you're so upset, I've never made anyone use a condom before. Why would I start now? That just set me off further. Seriously, Emily? I don't know, maybe because you're not 21 anymore and I figured you'd want to avoid catching an STD. At this point, her eyes started welling up with tears. I didn't want any of this to happen. I'm sorry, I really didn't think about it. Then she turned the question back on me. Did you use condoms during your hall pass? Yes. I shot back. All 3 times. Better safe than sorry. I paused for a second to steady myself, then added, I need to ask something I never thought I'd have to. How many times did you too? She looked up, as if counting in her head. 5, she said. 5? Are you kidding me? Trying to keep my composure, I followed up, so he finished inside you 5 times? She shook her head. No, just twice. My expression must have been unreadable because she quickly added, I told him the same thing I always tell you, and everyone before you. It clicked instantly. You told him he could finish wherever he wanted? Of course, you did. At that, she broke down crying. What do you want to do? She asked, her voice trembling. I don't want to do anything right now, I replied. But we should probably look into getting a paternity test, just so we know. A couple of weeks later, we went to a follow-up appointment. Emily asked the doctor about her birth control failing, and they ran through a bunch of questions. Turns out, a prescription athlete's foot medication she'd been taking might have made the pill less effective. Rare, but not rare enough, apparently. Later, I asked her if the pharmacist had mentioned anything about the interaction when she picked up the meds, and she said, I don't know, I wasn't really listening. Classic Emily. Sure enough, I found the bottle later, and there was a clear warning about it affecting birth control. I was about to bring up the paternity test right there in the office when Emily gave me a subtle cue to drop it. Once we were outside, I asked why. I don't want to spoil my pregnancy, she said softly. It's probably yours. We had sex twice as many times as Wes and I did. But if we get the test and it's not yours, her voice cracked, and she started to tear up. This is the only time I'll ever be pregnant. I'd rather believe I'm carrying your child than someone else's. I don't want to give that up. We've already decided we're keeping the baby, and you've told me you don't want to separate. Can we just wait and do the test after the baby's born? I agreed. I wanted her to enjoy her one and only pregnancy without this cloud hanging over us. The rest of the pregnancy went by in a blur of preparations. We decorated the nursery, stocked up on all the essentials, and made sure the car was ready. I baby-proofed the house as best I could, and our families were thrilled. They even threw us a beautiful baby shower. Overall, Emily's pregnancy went smoothly, and at 39 weeks, our little girl, Willow, came into the world. In the hospital, as we sat there marveling at our daughter, Emily turned to me and asked, "Would you like to get that paternity test done while we're here?" I shook my head. "No, I don't care anymore. This perfect little girl is mine. I don't need a test to tell me that. I'm her dad, and she's my girl." Emily's face lit up. I think that was exactly what she needed to hear. Tomorrow, we'll take Willow home, and I just want to savor every moment of what's ahead. Honestly, I doubt this will ever come up again. It's been 22 years since I last shared the roller coaster situation my wife, Emily, and I went through during her pregnancy. For a quick refresher, we had decided to give each other hall passes for 1 year. Emily used hers, and during that same period, her birth control failed, resulting in her getting pregnant. Even though we were always committed to raising the baby, the uncertainty surrounding paternity caused us a lot of turmoil. Ultimately, we chose not to get a test and just focus on raising our daughter, Harper, together. Now, Harper is 22 and a senior in college. She's thriving, an amazing young woman with a bright future ahead of her. She's attending the same university Emily and I graduated from, which is just an hour away, so she comes home often for breaks in the summer. This year, she asked if she could bring her boyfriend of 9 months, Drew, home for the holidays. Naturally, Emily and I agreed. The evening they arrived, we had a big dinner to welcome them. Everything started off great. Drew seemed like a good kid. He told us he was originally from Oregon, but his grandparents lived near the university, which is how he ended up going to school there. Apparently, his dad had also attended the same college, and Drew liked being close to his grandparents while pursuing his degree. The dinner conversation was going smoothly until Drew asked Emily what she did for work. She casually told him about her job, and his face lit up. "Oh, that's cool. That's exactly what my dad does," he said. He went on to explain that his father had interned at Emily's company years ago before moving on to work for a rival firm. His dad had since climbed the ranks, gotten promoted, and eventually moved the family to Oregon. I didn't think much of it at first, but I noticed Emily's posture stiffen. And then, like a freight train, it hit me. Emily kept her composure and asked, "Drew, is that a nickname, or were you named after the actor?" He chuckled and said, "It's sort of both. It's my last name. My full name's Andrew Woodson, but everyone's called me Drew since middle school. You know how kids are at that age, it stuck." At this point, I could see Emily starting to sweat. She pressed further. "And what's your dad's name? I might remember him from his time at the company." Drew answered casually, "Wesley Woodson, but most people just call him Wes." I felt like the floor had fallen out from under me. Emily and I managed to keep a straight face, but my mind was spinning. Harper noticed something was off and asked if everything was okay, but we quickly brushed it off and changed the subject. Later, Drew and Harper wanted to play some Mario Party with us, so we joined in, trying our best to act normal. Once they headed off to Harper's room for the night, Emily and I bolted to ours. "What the hell just happened?" I blurted out as soon as the door was closed. Emily looked just as shaken. "I know. What are the odds of this? Out of all the people in the world she could date. Oh my god, what if they're, oh god, she might be sleeping with her brother." I tried to grasp at straws. "Are we sure? Maybe they're not at that stage yet." Emily gave me a look that said she wasn't buying it. "Seriously, Jack? You know Harper tells me everything. I usually spare you the details because you can't handle it, but you need to wake up. She's just like we were in college. They've been intimate since their first date. And let me tell you, Drew is far from her first." I buried my head in my hands. "Oh my god. What do we do now?" Emily sighed. "We can't just demand she break up with him, she's way too sharp not to question that. And she really likes him, Jack. She might even love him. She's about to graduate, and this is the kind of relationship where serious life decisions get made. We can't just cross our fingers and hope they drift apart. We agreed we needed to get a paternity test immediately. But we also realized we'd have to tell Harper the truth, there was no way to explain it otherwise. She's independent and strong-willed, she wouldn't just blindly follow orders without understanding the reason. The next day, we asked Harper to convince Drew to leave early and visit his grandparents for the rest of the break. She looked confused but agreed. The house was tense for that last half-day, but we tried to keep things as normal as possible. Once Drew left, we sat Harper down and told her everything about the hall passes, about Wes, about our decision not to get a paternity test all those years ago. She looked like she'd been punched in the gut. I'll never forget the look on her face, shock, anger, and disgust all rolled into one. "So let me get this straight," she said. "Not only might I not know who my biological father is, but I could also be. Oh my God, this is disgusting. I might be dating my half-brother?" Her reaction broke my heart, but she wasn't wrong. We explained that we didn't want her to feel this way, and that's why we'd made the decisions we had back then. But now, given the circumstances, we needed to know for sure. We got the paternity test done, and now we're in limbo, waiting for the results. Harper is pretending to be sick so she can avoid seeing Drew without raising suspicion. She's still talking to him, but her sadness is evident. I know she's clinging to hope that the test will confirm I'm her father. And honestly, I'm hoping for the exact same thing. I can't even describe how heavy everything has been this past month. The dust is starting to settle, but it feels like the aftermath of a storm none of us were ready for. Let me get straight to it, the million-dollar question. Willow wasn't my biological daughter. Hearing that news hit her like a freight train. Not only did she find out that I wasn't her real father, but she also realized she'd been in a relationship with her half-brother. She was absolutely devastated. We invited Woody back to the house to tell him what was going on. He looked so concerned when he saw Willow crying. That's when we sat him down and told him the story about Jennifer and Wes, the hall passes, the slim odds that Willow and Woody would ever cross paths like this. Woody was stunned. At first, he got angry and stormed out. But later that evening, he came back, calmer, with his dad, Wes, on the phone. Wes wanted to hear everything. So I told him the whole story. He remembered Jennifer and that night they spent together. He sounded shocked but calm enough, saying he would fly out as soon as possible to sort this out. In the meantime, Willow wasn't convinced. She wanted absolute proof that Woody was her half-brother. She said, "This test only shows you're not my dad, but it doesn't prove Wes is." "How do you know Mom didn't cheat with someone else?" I could see how badly she wanted some hope, so I offered to do a sibling DNA test between her and Woody. He agreed, and we sent the samples off the same day. The next day, Wes and his wife flew in. When they arrived, we shared the results showing I wasn't Willow's father. We also told them about the sibling DNA test for Willow and Woody. That's when things started to get messy. Wes's wife was immediately defensive. She snapped, saying we shouldn't have tested Woody without their permission and accusing us of stirring up trouble. She kept saying, "You've already dropped this bomb on us, what more do you want from our family?" I could tell she was overwhelmed, but her defensiveness stood out to me. The next day, Wes and Willow took a paternity test to confirm everything. While we waited for those results, we tried to keep things as normal as possible at home. Willow started individual therapy, and we had a family counseling session to help process everything. She was holding up as best as anyone could in this situation. When the results came back, Wes and his wife came over so we could all go through them together. I opened the sibling test first. Willow and Woody were not siblings. Relief washed over everyone. I glanced at Jennifer, but her face was a mix of confusion and dread. Then Wes opened the paternity results, and as expected, they confirmed that he was Willow's father. The room fell silent as the realization hit everyone. Wes was stunned. "How can I be her father and they not be siblings?" he asked. It clicked for me immediately, but I stayed quiet, waiting to see how things unfolded. Wes's wife started spiraling. She accused us of faking the tests, calling them a scam, and said we were trying to extort them. Her over-the-top reaction confirmed what I had suspected. In the weeks since, the truth about her came out in the most painful way possible. Wes dug deep into his life, and it unraveled fast. He discovered she'd been having affairs since they were engaged. Woody's 14-year-old brother? Turns out he's not Wes's biological son either. To twist the knife even more, Wes found her Reddit account. She was a frequent poster in r/adultery, bragging about her affairs and sharing tips on how to cover her tracks. She even wrote about how amazing Wes was and how she loved eating cake while living her best life. Wes is now filing for divorce. Thankfully, the prenup his parents insisted on is going to save him a lot of heartache and financial strain. As for Woody and Willow, they've broken up but are staying friends. They've both been through too much to just walk away from each other entirely, but they've agreed it's best to move on romantically. Willow's been holding up surprisingly well, though I know she's still processing everything. She's in therapy and leaning on us for support. Wes called me recently, asking if he could build a relationship with Willow. He admitted he has a lot of mixed feelings. He's heartbroken that he missed out on her entire childhood, but he also wants to do right by her now. I told him it's her decision, and I'll support whatever she chooses. For now, we're focused on healing. I don't know what the future holds, but we're taking it one day at a time. All I care about is making sure Willow knows she's loved, no matter what. Time will tell where we all go from here.